Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
If you're tuned into this, you know that I podcast. I've been podcasting for a long time. I wish I would have started sooner. Do lots of different things on here. Get the opportunity to share things that I have stumbled upon, share my own insights, share experiences, and I also get to interview a lot of great people. And that started I think it was episode 30 or 33. I started interviewing people, which has really opened a lot of wonderful doors for me. One of the doors that is opened is it's opened the door for me to be interviewed by others. Strangely enough, you interview people, they want to interview you back, or they know somebody who should interview you, and that's how it works. If you're looking to be interviewed, my advice is start a podcast, because then you will stumble across lots of great people, and many of those great people either have their own shows or know people who have shows. Today is a little bit different of a twist for me. I'm going to share a podcast that I was interviewed on. It's Gina Gardner and Friends, and Gina was a guest of mine a long time ago, but we've stayed in touch. She lives over in the UK and has a great following, and I was wonderfully blessed to be on her show. And in listening to it, it's like, you know what, that's something that I want to reshare on the Networking RX podcast. So enjoy.
It's time now for Gina Gardner and Friends, the show that shares stories from inspiring people from a wide range of expert guests, all focused on helping you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. Gina Gardner is a multiple #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, business coach, and trainer. She's the founder of Genuinely You and has over 30 years experience of helping people step into their genuine, authentic power, personally and professionally.
Matthew.
Huh? Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I just need you to listen to me.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. I hear you. And what you say really does matter to me.
I mean, let's be honest. No kid likes rules, but I get why we have them. I hear you, and I know it's because you care.
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
And now, here's your host, Gina Gardner.
Hello there, and a huge welcome to today's episode of Gina Gardner and Friends. And today I'm joined by Frank Agin. Now, he calls himself a student of networking, but he's being incredibly modest because he is an arch networker. And he has so much expertise that he shares through his writings, through his podcast, and through his very special network, which when I can, I join. But for me, because of the time scale, it's very late in the evening. So Frank, a huge welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. Before we get started on our theme, which is the science of relationships, I'm really interested for you to share with our listeners a bit about your background and how you got to this place.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. Well, we all have interesting stories, but I wasn't really on this path of being, again, what I call a student of network. I'm always learning. I live in Columbus, Ohio, the central part of the United States. I came here to go to law school almost 40 years ago. I grew up in a household. My dad was a college professor. My mom was an educator. My stepmom was an educator. And it's a different world, and you get a job and you just work your job. And it doesn't work that way in the rest of the world. But at any rate, I went off to school and got a law degree, got an MBA, started my career in public accounting as a tax consultant, working with large U.S. companies. And it was a great job. It was great pay. It was great everything. Gina, I just didn't want to do taxes for the rest of my life. And so I decided to leave. And most people understand that. But I decided to leave and go into private practice. I really had an interest in small business. And a funny thing happened when I went into private practice. And the funny thing was that nothing happened. I had no idea how to get clients. It's just, and it's especially complicated for an attorney, certainly in the States, because we're not allowed to be calling people. We're not allowed to be knocking on doors. You just have to wait for the phone to ring. And it wasn't ringing. So I asked a friend of mine one day what I needed to do to become successful. And she said, you need to get into a tips club or a leads group. For your listening audience, something akin to a BNI, if you will. Well, there was an organization in town. It was based out of Pittsburgh, and they were starting groups here. And I got invited to one, and I joined. I didn't think twice about it. It was February 23rd, 1995. I still have the check that I wrote. And it made total sense to me that I could lift up my whole world just by helping other people. And it introduced me to a whole new concept of really what networking was, that there was a networking. And so I doubled down on it, got really involved in the organization. And make a long story short, at one point I had an opportunity and I bought the organization, and that dates back to the early 2000s. At that point, I stopped practicing law and decided, again, I'm really going to become the student of networking. I'm going to learn about why networking works, why relationships work, why they don't work, and written a number of books and have a whole organization. I have the Networking Hub, which meets once a month on Wednesday night, but I have a whole organization of people that meet every week to kind of go through this process. And along the way, I've just been really a fan of science and what science's role in our relationships. And it's fascinating.
What strikes me is that you've got the two sides of this particular coin. One is the science of relationships and relationships in a business context when you're networking. But I think the same principles apply to relationships in your personal life as they do to your private life to a large extent. And then the other is the power of networking when you're in a business environment, making that connection, which is not about direct selling. As you said, it's about helping people and making that relationship one where people trust you.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I tell people that God gave us one brain. He didn't give us a special brain for business. It's one brain. And we learn to trust people in our personal lives in a very similar manner to the way we learn to trust people in business.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, they're exactly the same. And I see people out there, Gina, who have wonderful personal lives, wonderful personal relationships, great family, great friends, and they struggle in business. And you say, listen, just duplicate what you're doing here and it'll work. And then I see people who are really, really adept at business and their personal lives struggle. And it's like, you know what? You have the formula. You need to bring the formula home with you. That's all. So you're spot on.
I think over the next sort of few minutes, it'd be really interesting to unpick the formula. And if you're listening to this and you are someone who wants to make friends and contacts, find your perfect partner, whatever the personal relationship may be, or you're in business and you want more customers or clients, this is a formula that I think if you take on board could really revolutionize your life, your business, or both. So what for you are the important elements of that formula?
Well, it's a simple 3-part formula. People need to know you, they need to like you, they need to trust you. And people tend to roll their eyes at that like, oh yeah, that's so simple. It is simple, but it's not easy, right? And that's the distinction. It's very simple. It's just 3 words, but executing on it is not always easy, especially when we're faced with lots of competing interests for our time, our money. I need to make a sale. I know I need to be nice. I know I need to be this person, but I need to make a sale, or I just want this relationship to work. I need it to work now. I need to feel secure that I have a relationship now. And it's We need to build this trust. If I could, let me tell just a quick little story.
Do.
Yeah, there's a famous anthropologist out there, Margaret Mead, and she was teaching a class, and one of her students asked, what was the first sign of human civilization? What was the first sign that we knew that humans were different than any other species on the planet? And as she was kind of gathering her thoughts, people are speculating, okay, was it fire? Is it weapons? Is it, clay pots, whatever? And she came out with a healed femur. A femur is the bone that connects the knee to the hip. And she said in the animal world, you don't see animals with a healed femur. When they break a femur, it's a death sentence. They can't move, they can't protect themselves, they can't get food, water, they just die, right? Or get overtaken by a predator. But in the in the human world, where we found humans with human remains where there was a femur that was clearly broken and it was healed, and without modern medical care, it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for that bone to heal. We knew there was something special, that somebody stayed behind to care for this person. And if you will, and you think about that, I mean, to me, that story gives me chills, because that was really the difference. I mean, if you had people out there that decided they weren't going to stay behind, hey, sorry about your luck, you broke your femur, we're moving on. Humans were very nomadic at this point. If you moved on with one less person. And you're just not as strong with one less person. And so you're more likely to fail. Whereas the people who stayed behind, they ensured that they could operate with a full complement of people, number one. But number two, they moved forward with people who knew that others cared for them and they were willing to turn the table if needed. So that gene pool became much more successful in time. Yes. Because they cared about each other. And so what I tell people is, and this kind of gets into the science of it, or maybe it's theory, I don't know, doesn't really matter. But what I tell people is that as humans, we are looking for people that are metaphorically willing to stay behind if we break our femur, right? Or whatever it might be. I'm having a bad day, my marriage failed. We're looking for people who care for us. And people are looking for people for us to care. And that's really kind of the linchpin of how we became society and how we, if you look at anything, it really comes down to that. We're looking to, to do business, or people on our podcast, or choose a lifelong partner. We're looking for those people that we can rely on when it's the darkest moment.
Yeah. Now, we're going to go for a short break, but when we come back, of course, the shift between not knowing somebody at all and knowing that you trust them to care at whatever level, in whatever way that may be, the shift from one end of the continuum to the other is one that I think there are certain strategies that can help you move along that. And we're going to explore those when we come back. So please don't go away.
Fillet of fish from a dish. Big Mac down a cul-de-sac. And even under a drying rack. Veggie deluxe in power cuts. Cheese bites for attic nights. Gherkin flirting. Wraps through cat flaps. Nugs on rugs. Or a share box to the river. Because now we deliver.
Don't lose your when building an online store. Shopify saves you time, money, and frustration when creating your e-commerce website. Get started today with Shopify.
Welcome back. Now, I've been to many a network group. Some of them are great, some of them are fairly painful. And I think there are many people who struggle when they go into a new group of people, whether that's business or pleasure, of thinking, I don't want to be here, I don't feel comfortable, I don't feel safe. What advice would you give to someone who is new to a networking group or to a social group in terms of breaking the ice?
Yeah, it gets back to this story of we're looking for people to care for us. And a lot of people go to networking events, Gina, and why are they there? They're there because they want to get something.
Yes.
I'm here because I want to talk about my whatever, right? And I understand that we all need to eat. We all need to pay for a place to live and drive a car and do the fun things we want to do in life, and all that takes money. And so I understand that people want to make a sale. But what I tell people to be successful in those networking environments where you're coming in and you really don't know anybody is I tell them to put on what I call the cloak of invincibility. Not invisibility, invincibility. And what the cloak of invincibility is just coming in with the heart that I'm here to serve. I'm not here to sell. I'm here to serve. I'm here to see what Jean is all about and who can I connect her to in my network that would advance her. Who does she need to know? I'm going to learn about her product or service and who might I connect her with, or who might she be able to help? Who might be able to help her? So I'm come in with that mindset. And the reason I call that the cloak of invincibility is that nobody will ever reject that. Nobody will ever say, Gina, get out of here. We don't want you helping anybody, right? They're not going to do that. They're going to say, oh my gosh, it's so great to have you here. Every time I talk to you, you're introducing me to somebody new or you have a special insight. And then the funny thing happens, Gina, is then they're going to say, well, what can I do to help you? They turn the tables on you. So many people start with this, what can I get mentality, where if they flipped it around and said, okay, what can I give? Let me start with what can I give? That immediately people warm up to them. And immediately people realize that they're somebody that they can trust. And it creates a whole relationship there.
I think that's really such an incredibly powerful approach to meeting new people in a business context. And in the personal context, I'd say, go and find out about the other person, take an interest in them, ask about them. And if you're shy and you're finding it's difficult, people generally speaking, if you give them the opportunity, they like to speak about themselves if you're truly, authentically taking an interest, not just going through the motions. I think people can tell, can't they, when you're doing it for the sake of doing it rather than doing it with real heart. Yeah. And so for me, it's very much the same technique of going in and saying, hi, Frank, tell me about you. Where are you from? What do you do? What are the things that you're interested in? That those icebreakers are a really great way of breaking the barrier down and starting to get to know the person. And I think that people don't buy products, they buy from people, really, don't they? They want to work with you, or they want to, they understand you and trust you, so they'll buy what you've got, what you're selling, because it's you and because that relationship is so strong.
No, absolutely. I mean, again, let's relate it to a personal relationship. Somebody goes on a first date and that individual does nothing but talk about themselves. It's like, I don't,
I've been on a few of those, I have to say.
Yeah, but it's like, a lot of times those don't end up in a second date for, okay, this person they certainly care about themselves. I can see that, but are they somebody I can rely upon? Do they care about me? And I think if you have that mindset right from the start, it just makes things so much easier.
I think broader than just creating relationships with whether it's personal or within the network is if we lived in a world where people recognized the power of service, not only in terms of the people that you're helping, but how we as individuals gain a huge amount from being of service, I think the world would be a very different place, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We would get more done. There would be a lot more peace. It would have a ripple effect. It really would.
I want to just focus on the trust bit for a moment, because we seem to live in a world where there's so much fear about and people are distrustful of one another. From your experience and your understanding of the science of trust, are there strategies or principles that you can share with our listeners that will help them recognize how their behaviors could be either getting in the way of developing trust, or how they could increase and deepen trust when they are, being with people, whether that's business or pleasure?
Well, just a quick story. Again, this is about science. They did a study over in Poland, much closer to you than me, but in Poland, they did a study and they put a young woman on the street, and she was tasked with approaching 100 other women, young women, walking alone. And at random, she would do one of two things. With 50, she would go up to and say, "Would you buy a candle from me?" That's all she would say. With the other 50, again, this is done at random, she would go up and say, "How's your day?" And then the person would respond, "Oh, I'm having a horrible day," or "I'm having a good day." And then she would respond in kind and say, "I'm glad you're having a great day," or "I'm sorry you're having a bad day. Would you buy a candle from me?" Well, in the control group, where she just started out what I call brass tacks, "Would you buy a candle for me?" and that's the only thing she asked, she sold 3 out of 50 candles.
Okay.
3 candles to 50 out of 50 people. With the experiment group, where she had a small talk conversation, and I think we can agree that that's the smallest small talk conversation that you could possibly have, she sold 11 out of 50. So what that's
4 times as many.
Yeah. What it shows is that by showing an interest, you build trust. Now, in the study, they talk about what's going on and what's happening. Our brains do a lot of wonderful things. Yeah. One of the things our brain does, it's this thing called heuristic processing. And one of the most important things we do as humans is determine whether we trust people. And what heuristic processing is, just a shortcut. And so what our brains are hardwired to do are look for clues as to why we can trust people. This person's interested in me. They care about me. There go. I can trust them. Why not? I'll buy a candle. Now, I don't know. A candle was a few dollars or pounds or euros or whatever. It wasn't a huge bit of trust, but the numbers are significant. And so it just, you ask, well, how can you build trust? It gets back to what you were saying earlier. It's like take an interest in people.
Yeah. Take
an interest in people, and that just I get on calls with people and they want to sell me right away.
I think one of the other things is when you are faced with somebody who's taking an interest in you, that takes the pressure off you as the person on the receiving end, that you can start to breathe and relax a little more. And in that relaxing, then you are able to actually, I think, start to employ your instincts, your intuition, your gut feeling. Is this person somebody that I resonate with, and do I want to take this relationship further? And I think it's so easy for the first impression to be one that gets set in stone, because there's no time to have that adjustment, which just a few interactions, as you described in the candle experiment, can make such a difference in terms of getting a measure of the person you're talking to.
Yeah, no, we just, you can, if your listening audience thinks about it when they're out talking with somebody, and it starts out with this warm small talk. It could be about the kids, it could be about vacation, it could be about the weather. You just have a different feel about the person. And it's science. It's something's going on inside you, and it's been hardwired into our DNA. Over thousands and thousands of years. And so recognizing that, looking at the science, take advantage of it, get to know people.
I think for me, it's a contact at a human level rather than anything else. We're going to go for a short break now. And when we come back, there are a couple more questions that I'd like to explore with you. So please don't go away.
Oh, Booking.com. I'm going to somewhere, anywhere. A beach house, a tree house. Honestly, I don't care. Hello, humidity. A fancy hotel with a sexy garden.
Landscape architect.
A tiny home with aggressive flair. Somewhere, anywhere. As long as they have childcare. Mama deserves a vacation.
Booking.com, booking.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Now, Frank, I know that you run network groups. For you, what are the things that, when people come to you, how do you engage with people to make sure that, as members of the network group, that they understand the science? What would people find if they came to one of your network groups?
Yeah, the organization I run is called AmSpirit Business Connections, generally we're a networking organization. What we really try to dial into are referrals and helping people understand how to get referrals, right? Understanding that, you have to have a relationship. People need to know you, they need to like you, they need to trust you, right?
Yeah.
And in time, that happens for most people who are meeting on a regular basis. That's going to happen. People are going to become friends. But the second piece of it is that they need to do a good job of messaging to people as to how to recognize opportunities. Okay. When you see this, think of me. When you hear this, think of me. And where we see people falling down and where we really help people in the organization is they get too general about it. So a realtor might say, well, anybody looking to buy or sell a house. Well, that tells me what you do. It doesn't really educate me on when you do it. But if you tell me, hey, if you know somebody who has just moved their mom into a home, into assisted living, that could be a good referral because they're probably going to be selling mom's home. Yeah. Or if you know somebody who's living in an apartment and a couple and they just had a baby, they're probably primed to buy a house. Yeah. And those are what we call the whens, not the whats, but the whens. And so it does get into the science of, okay, how do you register in people's brains? Just saying, hey, anybody buying or selling a house, that's true with all the different examples I gave, but it doesn't help people. It doesn't work with brain science. Whereas when you get in and you're somewhat specific about things, then our brains will latch on. Well, geez, I just had a friend and they're living in an apartment. They just had a baby. Yeah. I didn't think that they might be looking for real estate, but now I get it. And so we really talk a lot about those sorts of things. And then once somebody realizes there's an opportunity there, we encourage people to coach people up on, okay, now what do you say? Mm-hmm. Somebody just had a baby, they're living in an apartment. It's like, wow, have you guys thought about buying a house? I mean, is this, there's 3 of you now in this place that was tight with 2. And one cries, every 2 hours, we're thinking about it. Okay, who are you working with? So we talk about those sorts of things and really try to dial in to help people get referrals.
I think that's really powerful. And going back to the first of those points, which is about being quite specific, but specific in a very particular way, is that you're almost giving the hook for the other person's brain to latch on, to hang their coat on. You're doing the work for them so that then the brain hears something or sees something and can make that connection really easily. And I think so often, as you say, it's very vague. And so when an opportunity comes up, it's not recognized as an opportunity because there is no hook there. It's just, well, everybody might look for a house at some point or other, but not necessarily now.
Yeah, well, you're asking the other person to do the work for you.
Yes.
So, a hook is a very good example, a metaphor. I call it the difference between Velcro and Teflon. That very general statement is Teflon. It just goes in one ear and out the other.
Yes.
But Velcros are those 2 strips that stick together. And when somebody has that statement that I just can't stop thinking about, like I'll give you an example of one. We're picking on realtors here. Realtor told me, hey, if you know somebody who is getting along in years and they have a 2-story house, those stairs are probably getting to them. That could be a good referral for me. Now I can't drive down a street without looking at a house and saying, okay, that's not a house that an old person wants, okay, maybe, and so it's it's Velcro. It's just stuck in my brain, and I think about it all the time.
It's really good advice. Now, where can people find you? And I know that people network with you from all over the world.
They do. The best way to find me, I have a website out there, frankagin.com, FrankAgin.com. And that's really a great central hub. It lists my books, my emails there, my LinkedIn, my Facebook, Twitter. So I'll meet people where, I'll talk with people wherever they're most comfortable. But that's a great place to find all my communication.
Brilliant. Well, we're at the end of the show, but one of the things that we always ask our guests is we're very proud to belong to B1G1, Buy One Give One, which is an organisation that provides support for a whole range of projects worldwide. They're very well vetted, and every cent goes to support the projects. And we invite our guests to choose one of 4 themes, and we choose different projects during each month. And so the themes are clean water, education, health, and reforestation. Which of those 4 would you like us to donate to?
Education.
Brilliant. And thank you. And remember, just by listening, you're helping, because we donate meals to the hungry based on the numbers who listen. So please do spread the word, and know that just by listening to the show, not only are you helping yourself, but you're helping others. And I'd love to know what you think. Please email me at ginagardnerandfriends@gmail.com. You can go onto the site. There's prizes to be won if you go onto the site and look for this month's prize, and also leave a comment, and then you could be the winner of a great prize. So thanks very much. Thank you for joining me, Frank, and thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next show. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for listening to Gina Gardner and Friends, the show that helps you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. To learn more about Gina Gardner, go to genuinely-u.com. If you would like to work with Gina or book her as a speaker, email her at gina@genuinely-u.com.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is a copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.